Good morning. The recorder's going, and so I will post this later. So the title of this talk is The Real Meaning of Wearing of the Green. And our journey is going to take us back in time, first hundreds of years and then many thousands of years. I'd like to begin with a quote from George Santayana. "Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it." Famous quote. So today is March 17th, and spring equinox, I have my glasses, I guess I'll put them, is nearly upon us. As the wheel of the year turns towards light in the northern hemisphere, we long for the renewal and the return of green. The color green and the shamrock do not really belong to St. Patrick or the festivities associated with this saint and his lively holiday celebrations. March 17th was chosen by the church to honor St. Patrick because some believe he died on that day. However, some researchers believe that St. Patrick never really existed and that he's actually a fictional figure that was loosely based on a Roman priest. The origins of wearing of the green in the U.S. on St. Patrick's Day and for St. Patrick's celebrations in general, as ours today, date back to the 19th century when waves of Irish immigrants came to America. And like immigrants from everywhere who come to this country, they were looking for better jobs and better lives and to escape repression. And in the case of the Irish, especially after the Great Famine of the 1840s and 50s, they began wearing green and carrying Irish flags along with American flags as a point of pride for their home country, Ireland. The Revolutionary Society of United Irishmen adopted green as their color in the 18th century, and there was wide support for this organization, with men, women, and children bedecked in green-hued garments or green ribbons. And at the time, this was considered sedition by the British. But it was a small step for that little sprig of shamrock to make its way into Ireland's eternal history. The shamrock, which is now worn on St. Patrick's Day, and we all got one today, is a sign today of allegiance to the country's patron saint. But it emerged as a religious emblem at that time. The shamrock came to be seen as a symbol of Ireland, even more so than the harp, which was depicted on green flags carried by the Revolutionary Society throughout the rebellion during the era of 1798. That shamrocks were once forbidden to grow on Irish ground sounds ridiculous now, but it was once law. If shamrocks were found growing on someone's land, people could be hanged. At that time, and up to recent times, shamrocks grew wild and were found in fields, gardens, even crevices in walls, growing everywhere just like clover. Laws were established against dissenters, and as early as 1695, Irish Catholics were forbidden to own land, to school their children, to vote, to own a horse worth more than a few dollars in our money, be a public official, a lawyer, a soldier, or serve on a jury. And that period, therefore, saw the end of many Irish traditions, including wearing the Irish kilt. The Wearing of the Green was a song written by Dubliner Dion, and I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, looks like Bosicalt, in the mid-1800s. The song follows the tune of an earlier or Coleraine air, the origins of which are unknown. After America's Revolution, the Irish thought it was time to find their own independence, and green then became a symbol for Irish independence. The Wearing of the Green is also an Irish street ballad that laments the troubles and repression of the ordinary farm laborer, street cleaner, farmers of the time, and also those of the gentry whose allegiance lay with Irish freedom fighters, whether they were Catholic or Protestant, and all others who were prepared to lay down their lives for the wearing of the green. The lyrics of the song describe the British practice of hanging Irish men or women who wore green during the rebellion. This included such simple things as wearing a shamrock or a sprig of green. Many more lyrics were written later, including Rising of the Moon, which relates to the rebellion of 1798, when the Irish finally stood up against English tyranny. The tune was even present in the Civil War in America as the Army of the Free. Britain tried to stamp out anything to do with Irish identity, seeing their language and color as weapons that could rally nationalist fervor. And I want to spontaneously note today, I saw something that thousands turned out in Russia to protest the election of Putin and standing up with Navalny. So in many ways, the purpose of this talk, this is spontaneous, is to remember that freedom is a very, very priceless commodity that needs to be defended. Irish newspapers published notices stating that to wear green as an emblem of affection for Ireland was prohibited, and that to do so would lead to imprisonment, transportation, the rope, or the bayonet. For women, it exposed them to brutal assaults of common soldiery and also death. Ironically, blue is believed to have been associated with Ireland before green. Henry VIII claimed that he was king of Ireland in the 16th century, and his flag at that point was blue. That's at least one reason why a blue flag with a harp is still associated with the Irish president. And the harp is the other main symbol of Ireland, along with the shamrock. This dates back to Irish bards whose songs and stories were the chief entertainment in medieval Gaelic society. Light blue became associated with the Order of St. Patrick, an 18th century era order of knights, perhaps to create a shade of blue for the Irish that was different from the royal blue associated with the English. This is reported by scholar Timothy McMahon, who's vice president of the American Conference for Irish Studies. Now we turn back the clock further. Ireland is known as the Emerald Isle, but green is the color of the earth, and the three leaves of the shamrock form an ancient symbol of the triple goddess, maiden, mother, and crone, or wise elder. Although tradition claims that St. Patrick used the shamrock to teach about the male trinity, the threefold deity goes way back in time, thousands of years, and was a symbol of the divine feminine. It's an ancient symbol appropriated by the Catholic Church in its effort to eradicate worship of the ancient goddess. And the shamrocks I wear, and that you all wear, whether you knew it or not, honor the goddess in her threefold form. The legend that St. Patrick banished snakes from Ireland is yet another reference to the wisdom of the divine feminine, which is often symbolized as a serpent, that the church drove underground as the patriarchy rose to power. Ironically, Ireland is one of the few places on the planet that never had native snakes, but that is believed to be a result of the Ice Age rather than the actions of any Catholic priest. Brigid, pronounced Breed in Gaelic, is called the Exalted One or Bright One and is a goddess of pre-Christian Ireland. She appears in Irish myth as a member of the Tuatha De Danann and is the people of the goddess Danu, a Celtic race of gods. They were believed to live on an island in the west and to have perfected magic. Ireland is a land of magic, populated by elves, fairies, dwarves, leprechauns, and pots of gold at the end of rainbows. I pause now for a brief commercial break. Next Saturday, we will have another game night right here to play and celebrate the game Quintangled, a game that is also filled with magic. I suspect a lot of the inspiration from the game came from my Irish ancestry. Players embark on a heroic quest and along the way encounter helpers and hinderers, obstacles, and unexpected good fortune. Thank you for listening. Brigid is associated with fertility, healing, poetry, and the craft of metalsmithing. Cormac's glossary, written in the 10th century by Christian monks, says that Brigid was the goddess whom the poets adored. She was said to have two sisters, Brigid the healer and Brigid the metalsmith, indicating that she, too, was a triple goddess archetype. Medievalist scholar Pamela Berger says, quote, Christian monks took the ancient figure of the mother goddess and grafted her name and functions onto her Christian counterpart, St. Bridget of Kildare. Goddess and saint are both associated with holy wells. At Kildare and many other sites in Celtic lands, tying pure white wool cloths next to healing wells on the eve of Imbolc, February 1st, and other forms of petitioning or honoring Bridget still occur. This ancient goddess was so powerful and revered by the Celts that she was just brought wholesale into the pantheon of Christian saints. Her festival is February 2nd, Imbolc, in the ancient Celtic calendar, and is the halfway point between winter solstice and spring equinox. It is a pagan festival that celebrates the return of life after winter. Imbolc is one of the 4 major Celtic fire festivals that are the midpoints between the equinoxes and solstices. Christians call the Feast of St. Bridget Candlemas, and a ritual of candles as sacred flames are lighted in churches in her honor. In a dim reminder and demeaning echo of its symbolic power, we now call that Groundhog Day and wonder if Punxsutawney Phil will see his shadow. So pause for a moment as the passage of time loses memory. St. Bridget, like the goddess she came from, is associated with perpetual fires like the one maintained by 19 nuns at her sanctuary in Kildare Island. Giraldus Cambrensis and other chroniclers reported that the sacred flame at Kildare was surrounded by a hedge which no man was permitted to cross. Men who attempted to cross the hedge were said to be cursed and go insane, die, or become crippled. One is tempted to see poetic justice. The tradition of female priestesses tending sacred and naturally occurring eternal flames is a feature of many ancient traditions, including the Greek Hestia and the Roman Venus. Reaching even further back in time, nearly 40,000 years ago, a great goddess was revered, and clay figures of her are the earliest depictions of humans that have ever been found. Cultures were more agricultural then, and time was experienced as circular. The growing cycles of Earth were honored. Seasonal festivals celebrated the annual ebb and flow of life as people moved in more conscious resonance with shifting cycles of light and dark, life and death. Western culture no longer moves in harmony with these natural cycles, and in fact, in many cases, we can no longer see the stars. In ages past, women were revered as givers of life, and each stage of a woman's life was viewed as an important crossroad or rite of passage. Women understand these cycles because they have framed our lives, and there is an intrinsic ebb and flow to the feminine experience. The stages of a woman's life are demarcations of the flow of blood, pre-puberty, childbearing years, and the cessation of menstrual flow. And each month of an adult woman's life forms a complete cycle of birth and death, a microcosm of life itself. Across the globe, these phases were seen as maiden, mother, and crone or elder, and worshipped as a triple goddess thousands of years before the male trinity, and often symbolized by the phases of the moon, the waxing crescent, the full moon, and the waning crescent. Women's cycles were seen as mirrors of the cycles of the sun, moon, and stars. Most ancient cultures, unlike ours, honored the elder crone as a woman who had fully come into her power. Today, instead, we fear age, often losing the voice of experience. Serious scholars of myth have noticed that the tenor of the stories began to change as the ages shifted from Taurus to Aries to Pisces. Symptoms of this shift in Greek myths included an increasing glorification of war, accompanied by a deteriorating value of agriculture and cyclical time. And we have heroes like Udgar building growing domes to help us in this time honoring the green in all its levels. Western culture has devalued, even demonized aspects of the feminine for nearly 4,000 years, effectively pushing these archetypes beneath our conscious awareness. the goddess was diminished and replaced by a solitary, authoritarian male god. The loss of the divine feminine has resulted, I believe, in a rupture of mind and heart. The loss has caused a reverberation through the centuries of increasing violence, alienation, and growing environmental devastation. However, a resurgence of the sacred feminine is sweeping the planet. But what is the nature of the feminine side of the divine, and how is goddess different from God? These realities profoundly affect the way women view and value themselves, and likewise how men perceive everything feminine, including what is feminine within the masculine. The many facets and myriad manifestations of the goddess embody a seeming paradox, complex and sometimes contradictory. Like life itself, her expressions can be alternately gentle, fierce, loving and nurturing, or creative and destructive. Feminine power is magnetic and attractive, unlike masculine power that sets out to conquer, however subtly. The power of a woman is also like the all-encompassing depths of the ocean, able to contain all the joys of the sorrows in the world and still give. It's a very Buddhist idea. I believe humanity has a deep need to revere the feminine side of the divine. And this unmet need and surfacing in our times, like the phenomenal popularity of the book and movie The Da Vinci Code, which highlighted principles of the feminine. Apparitions of Mary, mother of Jesus, have been on the rise around the world. One of the most documented in recent times was in Zaytun, Egypt, where literally hundreds of thousands of people of diverse beliefs stood side by side over a period of 23 years, watching as Mary appeared over a small church in a suburb of Cairo. Millions make annual pilgrimages to Fatima, Lourdes, and the site of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico, which was originally the site of a goddess. Worldwide response to the death of beloved Princess Diana of Wales also spoke to our need of revering a feminine archetype. Women and men both can reconnect and reclaim feminine energy by learning to move more consciously in resonance with cycles, monthly, yearly, and the stages of our lives. Embracing the deep symbolic meaning of cycles of blood is empowering. Indian cultures have moon lodges where women can be apart when they bleed, and this is seen as the height of their monthly power. Paying attention to the phases of the moon is a simple yet powerful way to honor the constant yet ever-changing moon. And we can create a symbolic moon lodge in our own lives, whether we're men or women, by taking some sacred time apart. Seeking the wisdom or counsel of a wise grandmother can bring that stage of life back to its once honored place. The strength of a grandmother is a potent force indeed, someone who has stood at the gates of birth and faces the portal of death. We should be willing also to sit at the bedside of someone who has chosen to die consciously through hospice. These gateways were once the domain of the crone before being stolen by the patriarchy and modern medicine. That's changing, however. There are now death doulas. Thanks to the effort of heroic researchers and scholars, this knowledge is being rescued from the path. Knowing our true history empowers us. As women increasingly find our voices and our power, so many others who battle for their rights with dignity, balance will be restored to our planet. And we think of LGBTQ people, trans people. We think of the not so long ago resurgence of Black Lives Matter, and the story of the Irish and how they had to fight to overcome repression for their identity. And so today, as we celebrate the wearing of the green, let us take time to thank the goddess and the green and blue earth with her trees and flowered hills, her deep oceans and white clouds. She gives us life, as well as the occasional green beer. Thank you very much
Smith.